Welcome to the next installment in my video lecture series in economics. And in this particular video lecture, I'm going to be taking a look at market equilibrium with and without fines. Fines associated with causing pollution or any other type of externality. So we're going to take a look at what the market looks like without the fine, and then if we impose the fine, and what the fine should look like. This is for my public finance course, and it specifically relates to the section on public sector solutions to externalities. So again, we're starting here with the market equilibrium, which is the demand curve, which is the marginal benefit curve, and the supply curve, but this again is the marginal private cost. This is just the direct cost that the firm is incurring. It does not include any of the externality costs that they are imposing on other individuals. So where the marginal cost and the marginal benefit intersect one another, we get the equilibrium quantity. So that's the equilibrium quantity in the market without the fines. If we want to impose a fine, we have to fine the individuals, let's say, on a per unit basis. And what we have to do there to determine what that amount is, we take the total amount of pollution or whatever the cost of the externality is, that total cost, and divide it by the number of units that were produced. So we get a per unit cost associated with those externalities. Sometimes people refer to these as damage costs. So basically, whatever those external costs that are being imposed upon individuals, we are going to internalize them to the company by fining them on a per unit basis. And they will include this in their cost calculations, and this will impact their supply curve. So if we fine them a per unit amount, that shifts the marginal social cost curve to the left. So we're including the marginal cost of pollution, or we could just say the damage costs associated with that. So by imposing the fine, we're increasing cost of doing business. This shifts the supply curve, i.e. the marginal private cost plus the social cost curve. So we have marginal social cost in total here. So this is just the supply curve adding in the per unit damage costs. And where that intersection occurs, that gives us the market equilibrium. And again, if we subtract off the efficient level of output from the market, that gives us the excess level of production. And the vertical distance here is the fine or the per unit tax. So if we want to have the firms internalizing those externality costs, we have to fine them a per unit amount. Now, there's a great deal of debate. How do you come up with that determination? We'll deal with that type of exercise and looking at that argument later on in the course. But now we're just taking a look at theoretically, how would we internalize those costs? We would take at a production level, what are those external costs that this firm is imposing upon individuals, and divide by the level of production, which would give us a per unit cost of those externalities, and we would fine the firm that amount. That gives us the vertical distance between the marginal private cost, the supply curve, and the marginal social cost, and that brings us to the efficient level. Just realize that we're just doing this theoretically. We're not actually putting any numbers with this. There are problems associated with this. Like I said, how do you come up with what those externality costs are? There's a great deal of debate whether or not you should do this, if you should do it, and then how you accurately go about coming up with what those externality costs are. But I just want you to have a notion of how can you, quote unquote, force a firm to internalize those external costs. You could place a per unit fine. For example, for every unit that they produce, they pay 50 cents for every unit. So they will internalize that cost.